Today, we're looking at a brown ink by KWZ, their Iron Gall Orange. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that you can skip around to the parts you're most interested in, or if you watch the whole thing, I'd appreciate you. You can follow me on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen inks as much as I do, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Lamy All-Star with a broad nib, wrote with it for a day, and then used it to take my notes for this video. In order to have some standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading going on here. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, very nice shading, 8 seconds to dry. The medium is much darker than the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both? Sorry, the scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation, the medium shows none, and that's about what we got in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It does offer some light shading throughout. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, nice shading throughout it. A lot of in and out speckling here, so it's that peppering. 14 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 22 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows no color variation, although we do get some of it with the extra fine. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub, maybe just a hair lighter, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, very nice peppering of shading, 9 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows color variation, the medium shows none, and that's barely, kind of what we got in the writing. Little less color variation in the extra fine than the scrubby. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this very light brown that pushes its way up, and we see moments of some orange, and at the very top a kind of pink, and that's about it. And that's where this gets interesting, because the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it in the water. And here we see that light brown has started to form a line, started to stay there. The rest of it pushes up as a very light brown. We really do see the orange standing out for itself here, and at the top a very bright pink. But interestingly, that draws my attention to a moment of what looks like some purple there in the left 1/3 on the top line. Now this one I let dry for 24 hours before I dunk it into water. That brown line is a bit darker there. It does push its way up. The orange is sort of blending with the brown a little bit. That pink, very noticeable on the top. And that hint of purple that we saw in the last filter paper is on the far right side of this one, but there's still a moment of seeing it there. Here we see 72 hours of dry time before it dunked into water. That line on the bottom, much more of the brown stayed. There's a lot less of it moving up. The orange is much more noticeable on its own again. The pink at the top, very noticeable. And that purple is now, you can see it on the far left side, but we still see these tiny little hints of some purple bits, which is what's giving this ink its very nice shading.
Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it.
Looking at the highlighter, I have no issue using this ink in a note-taking situation because it handled itself so well. Now, water is lifting all the darkest tones, but definitely not those, not the kind of gray, brownish tones that were at the bottom of those filter papers. However, while water's not getting it entirely off the paper, it's an iron gall ink, it's bonding with the paper. It's not bonding with the plastic of my pen on the converter. So it only took water to get it out of my pen. Pen flush is breaking down the brown that's on the paper a bit farther than the water did, but not entirely. Again, I didn't need to use flush to get it out of my pen. 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it from the paper, but you don't need it to get it out of your pen.
I test ink viscosity with a tilt test that I'll link somewhere. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9.
KWZ's Iron Gall Orange has a viscosity of 2.31, making it normal.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all 6 of those numbers. Now for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
KWZ's Iron Gall Orange has an average dry time of 14 seconds, making it still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Iron Gall Orange, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice blue and chose Private Reserve's Tanzanite.
The second writing sample is done on black and red Franklin Christoph and Limone paper.
Here we're looking at black and red notebooks, a little bit more absorbent paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen. There is quite a bit of shading going on here. It's very nice. 4 seconds to dry. Medium is a lot darker than the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine, far left to far right, does show some color variation. We did get it. The medium showed none and we got none. Franklin Christoph paper with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine or stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. 7 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and there was none. And Limone paper. Lots of bleeding. Not touching the page underneath. So there's at least that. Lot of ghosting. The extra fine, you might be able to use the back of the page. You wouldn't with the medium. The 1.1 has a ridiculous amount of feathering. It's gross, don't use it. No spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine has a ridiculous amount of feathering and spread. It's writing at about a medium. No halo, no sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine. Ridiculous amount of feathering the entire way. It's blurry. It's spread from about a medium to a broad, like a pelican broad. No halo, no sheen, no shade. 9 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we didn't get any, and that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of KWZ's Iron Gall Orange? I didn't see any orange in the writing with this ink. It really was brown the entire time. It left me a bit disappointed and mourning the loss of an orange ink. What nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? A wet pen is going to put down a very solid, decent brown, but a dry pen is going to make it a bit lighter and allow some of the shading that this ink can offer. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.